psychotherapist based in Studio City, California. During today's session, we're going to be talking about practicing healthy ways to have conversations with our family members that may be a bit difficult during this holiday season. We know that especially relevant around this time of year because we normally don't see people that we might have drama with, that we might have a lack of communication with. So today we have the wonderful pleasure of going over communication topics and skills that are going to help us better connect with our family members. What would that include? So what I normally hear very frequently is, Z, they're just not understanding why I do what I do, why I have the career. My parents don't understand why I'm dating a certain person or why I spend my time doing X, X, and X. And it's a lack of communication and connection. And what we want to do today is just increase that so we can have better, healthy relationships. Because at the end of the day, that's all that we want, right? Mm-hmm. So today, to help me elaborate on this topic, I'm going to have the absolute pleasure of introducing Isabel Chavez, who is a team member of the Friend community and has volunteered to be on camera today to share her experiences and how we can increase her communication skills to use with her own family. So it will be my absolute pleasure to go ahead and let Isabel tell us about her experiences.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I think this is perfect timing because I actually just got back yesterday from Sacramento, where I live with my home and my family for Thanksgiving, and definitely a lot of arguments. I mean, it was a great, wonderful family time getting to spend with each other, but then always down the road there always ends up being some kind of argument. Whatever that ends up being, whether it starts something really small and just ends up blowing up or whatnot. So I guess one recent example, and I think for me and my sisters, I have two older sisters, and the second oldest one, we're very, very close, but we often get into a lot of arguments. Mm-hmm. And so I'm realizing now, as our time is a lot more limited that we get to spend with each other, especially now we're all living in different cities. It would be a lot more enjoyable if we would just avoid these, areas of conflict that we would always have growing up, mm-hmm. and just find ways to better navigate our conversations. So it just doesn't end up in arguments just for the sake of arguing. So I guess one specific example was, last Friday,
Black Friday.
Yeah, this is Black Friday. This is the last day with my sister. She was leaving toward the other night, but we just kind of basically got into an argument over her being more educated or just knowing more than I do.
One-upping you?
Yeah, almost essentially. And it kind of just started off with her trying to say I should, be more in touch or join some cultural organizations, in LA now that I'm out of college, be more involved in that, because she recently joined one in DC. And then what started off as a suggestion to do that kind of blew up into basically an argument over who knew more and who was more educated. And I went on to say, I was very involved in an organization my first 2 years of college. I was an international development studies major. And so I knew more because of X, Y, and Z. And then she went on to say well, I went to Georgetown. I, have been involving myself in different organizations. And yes, I am more knowledgeable because blah, 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 blah. And so it just really just blew up from there and just kind of just went on to, different things that kind of just wanted to prove our point or prove who knew more, as opposed to even just whatever the subject kind of started off as, which was really kind of unfortunate. It was our last day together. And again, our time's so limited. And so instead of just resulting back into what would be, growing up or constantly arguing, mm-hmm. I think now since our time is limited, I want to be able to not result to those communication tactics that we just naturally go to of just wanting to one up one another or wanting to prove each other wrong or, rather than actually genuinely trying to listen to what the other person has to say.
Yeah.
So I think along with that, eventually hurtful things end up even being told to the other person. And of course, I'd love to be able to hear how to even just avoid that. Yeah. I think she has a different background as me, or even just from her education. So she has very different views. And so even when she wants to bring up specific topics, it just always becomes a battle. And then we don't really want to listen to what the other person has to say because we don't really care what the other person has to say.
Yeah, we're heated. We're mad.
Yeah, and so it always ends up kind of turning a bit sour. And it's a natural way that we communicate. And so maybe the next day we'll brush it off, but it's definitely unhealthy. And I think it could be a lot better. And I'm noticing that it's definitely a common theme, like in my family, that even like with my parents or my other sisters or my mom, it's never really about, what the topic is. It's just about who's right, who's wrong, or just not really, listening to what the other person has to say, listening to the other perspective. It's just about coming up with like, what the next person.
Yeah, with the one up for the next person.
Yeah, or the rebuttal, or anything like that. So it makes kind of the times that we're with family, these holiday times, which should be like happy. It ends up being turning into arguments or turning into hurtful.
To sour times.
Yeah. And so I'd love to hear, I guess, some advice to kind of better communicate.
Yeah.
Get away from those bad habits that we've been ingrained with our communication styles for very many years and just kind of create something that is better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing, Isabel, and I always say this because I got sisters, so I hear you.
Right.
We are never really taught how to do relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're taught how to tie our shoes, how to feed ourselves, like don't die, don't starve.
Yeah.
But we're never taught, hey, this is how we communicate in a healthy manner.
Right.
Normally, not all the time, but we learn this from our family of origin. So I'm going to take a guess here, but it's also what you saw in your family of origin, like how you communicate, like you fight and then you get over it and then you just go eat,
Yeah.
All right. So in this moment, I want to ask you a couple of just follow-ups before we go into like solution focus or some communication techniques. Okay. What is it, do you feel, that comes up inside you in that moment when you and your sister are just going ham, like you guys are going at it? Like what comes up feeling wise? Like, is it like, let's identify some feelings here.
Like annoyed, very annoyed. I don't know, I get angry, I guess.
Annoyed, angry.
Definitely.
What else?
Yeah. Like I just like want to roll my eyes.
Frustration, maybe?
Frustration.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think those would be like the main feelings, or especially when you feel like the other person isn't actually want to hear what you have to say, a lot of frustration, and they just want to, tell you.
Yeah, tell you where to go and what to do with it.
Yeah,
yes.
Definitely.
So here's the beautiful news. I'm so excited for you and your sister. You want to know why?
Why?
Because conflict is a sign that both parties want deeper connection.
Mm-hmm.
I would be scared if you and your sister weren't fighting right now.
Right.
Because it means that no party is no longer interested or invested in the relationship. Mm-hmm. So when I hear conflict between anyone, whether it be siblings, whether it be mom and child, mom and dad, or just partners, it's a beautiful thing. It's just learning how to, enroll that into something positive. So here's what's coming up. Are you into colors or the color wheel or any of that?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay. So I really love colors, and I feel like different fields can be applied to psychology or communication techniques, and here's how. So there's primary colors, which are yellow, red, and blue, right? And then under those, you can make secondary colors, which are green, orange, purple, you get it, right? Feelings are the same way. So you just identified that when you're going at it with your sister, you feel annoyed, you feel angry, you feel all kinds of stuff, right? So there's this thing where the primary feelings are fear, sadness, and happiness. Those are the main core feelings. And from those, the babies come out, which are jealousy, which are annoyance, which are frustration. They're just a child of the parent feelings, right? So when you say, I feel angry, it might be just anger, just, plain and simple, like you're angry at your sister. Or it might be even possibly sadness that you're not being heard or you're not connecting with your sister, that you so uberly want to do that with her. I don't know, like, how does that sit with you?
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Because I don't think it's really anger or whatnot. There's definitely something deeper to it. Yeah, definitely not being heard. And I think maybe, the connection part as well. I think that's something that growing up we've been getting a lot better with, because we've finally been being a lot more open with one another and like sharing a lot more. There's still a lot more work to be done, but I think that is definitely something that we want and are craving.
Yeah. Do you feel that also from her?
Definitely. I
Yeah.
do think so. Yeah.
Awesome. So then there's room for connection here. All right.
Yes.
So I love humor and I love movies. Have you seen Matilda, the movie?
Yes.
Yeah. You remember that scene where it's like, I'm big, you're small. I'm right, you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like with siblings, we very frequently play this game of like,
Yeah.
who can up who, right?
Definitely.
So keeping that in mind, we always want to think, where is this coming from for the other person? But more importantly, where is this coming from for me, right? So when sister plays that game with you, what also comes up for you? Like what thoughts? Is it maybe like a repeated pattern of like, oh, here we go again? Or is it maybe remembering their caretakers that you and her had growing up?
I think for one thing, it is a bit of, oh, here we go again. I think other times it's kind of like, I know how she's communicated in the past. So it's like, I immediately just go onto defense. I think that's a big one. And I guess the caretaker of the past.
Yeah, so I use the term caretaker, right? Because for some people, it may not be their parents that raised them or took care of them. It might be auntie, it might be grandma, it might be abuelita, like whoever it might be, right? Or tita, or whoever it might be. So it's important to know who showed us how to do this song and dance.
Right.
So when we're in conflict, how do we find resolution with this? In some families, it's let's scream to the top of our lungs and see who wins, right? Like,
yeah.
And then there's other families where they just sit very quietly and say that's the end, and then they brush it literally under the rug, just like this one here, right? And then there's others where they have like a time limit, and then after that they're like, oh well, we're just gonna forget about this and move forward, right? So what style was for your family?
Right, that's a great question. Definitely like seeing my mom and dad when they argue and when they fight, it's always just like a continually you know, they keep going at it, and then maybe like they'll even leave the conversation, and then my mom will come back almost like 10-30 minutes, an hour later, she'd come up with another thing that she wants to say when it's like the argument is done, and it goes back to my dad just to kind of like keep it going or to like keep proving her points.
Right.
Yeah, so definitely I guess that is where it could stem from.
Yeah, and it's not always the case. It's just, it's really good to explore this and kind of think like, where did I learn this song and dance, right?
Yeah.
So here's my question. If you guys had to take mom and dad, right, if each of them are a character, and then it's you and sister, let's say like in the car or at the store, because it's Black Friday, you guys are shopping, right? So who is playing mom and who is playing dad? Who just goes on and on and on chasing that?
Right. Interesting. I guess... It's a little bit of both. Like my mom is definitely the one that keeps going on and on and on. And I guess for me and my sister, we both come with comebacks that will keep going on. I definitely feel like maybe I do it a bit more though. Yeah.
Like I got this, like I'm going to get you this time, right? Okay. So one thing that kind of pops up for people in conflict is this not only need to be heard and connection, but also to be reflected, validated, and be given empathy. So one of the hardest things to understand, I think, in communication is the difference between expressing empathy and sympathy. How familiar are you with the terms and what they look like?
I'm pretty familiar with empathy. It's kind of being able to feel like what the other person is feeling, and then sympathy is like where you can like say like I feel sorry for you, like, or, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I would completely agree, Isabel. So it's the difference of like you saying like, you know, I had a really big fight with my sister and we're not speaking right now. So sympathy would sound more like, oh, that sucks. Want to grab a sandwich? And it's very just dismissive, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because when we don't hear the other person and we don't empathize with what they're going through, we feel we're not connecting with them. So it seems like you're craving and wanting that from sister, but she's also wanting that from you. And it's kind of like this silly thing where we're literally like twisting each other's arm of like, no, you go first, and nobody wants to first. Gandhi says, if we want to see a change in the world, we have to show up first. We have to be that change. And it's really tough, but really deciding, Isabel, in that moment, do you want to be right or do you want to be connected with sister? Right?
Yeah.
So then once we move past our ego or we move past our own personal needs in that very moment, we can actually really hold space and actively listen for the other. I think one of the most beautiful arts that are out there is the art of listening. And nobody really teaches us this, you know? So one of the arts of listening is understanding what is being said without saying it. it's listening to their speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that sister's, throwing at you, like, well, I went to Georgetown and I did this and I'm right and you're wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that she's not saying? What is it that she's communicating that you could pick up on because you're very intelligent, you got this?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that she's not saying that you're picking up on?
Based on saying like those different comments,
Yeah,
how does that make me feel?
It's all in the comments.
Yeah,
it's all in the comments.
I mean, I guess if I'm shocking this correctly, like when she's saying those things, basically just saying that she's like smarter than me or like knows more than me.
I'm an intelligent woman.
Yeah.
I got this. I know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also a form of, sister, you're so important to me, and I love you, and I need you to provide an additional source of validation for me. So not by any means does it mean that your sister's lacking validation or doesn't get enough of, but you're so important to her that she wants it from you. That's how badly she wants to connect with you and wants to be like, hey, am I good in your book? And if you were to hear that secret message, how would your response be different, if any?
I would definitely listen a lot more to what she'd have to say. And I wouldn't react in the way that I would before.
Yeah. See, a lot of times when we're able to hear the secret message, we are less triggered or we're less emotionally provoked. And that's where I think the big difference happens with people, because you're an educated woman, right? And here's the thing, throughout school, they'll teach us math, science, English, all this like basic stuff, right? Like basic, and they don't teach us the difference between emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. Emotional intelligence is understanding what are they saying that they're not saying right now. And emotional maturity is, what am I going to do with that? So you literally hearing her saying, well, I went to this school and I know this and you're wrong and I'm right. It's like, you know what, it's just, dang, you're a baddie. Like, yeah, of course. And then she's just be like, what? Like, what do you think sister would say if you communicated that way with those tools, with answering the secret message?
Yeah. She would probably kind of like be a lot happier with it, and like we would both connect. Like she would probably want to actually share, like, because I know that it came from a place of like she wanted to share what she learned. I took it in a different way, and also the way her tone of voice, but like she would probably be a lot happier, be like, oh yeah, like let me tell you more, like, we definitely would have connected a lot more, because we definitely can, and we had in the past, and I think it definitely would have gone a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, there's this other really important piece, and I kind of giggle with you on this one. It's like, what about us? What about our needs, right? And that's where these tools come in. One of the most powerful things I have ever seen, actually, in my own reality and other people's reality and in life experience, is the power of the I feel. And it seems so basic and so minimal, but it's not. A lot of times we tend to do the whole like blame game, kind of like the Kanye song, right? The blame game. But what we do is we say, well, you make me feel such way, or you don't listen, or you can't, like, I can't even with you. That's my favorite. But I can't even is not a feeling. So let's just say in that conflict with sister that you were to use the I feel, and I feel should be followed by a feeling. Here's where humans make the erroneous mistake. I think should be followed by a thought. But a lot of times we say, I think you're sad. No, that's a feeling. Or I feel you should go to Target. No, that's a thought. Right? So if you were to lead with your feelings with sister in that very moment, right? So picture the fight, Friday, it's Black Friday, right? Right after Thanksgiving. Yeah. What feeling would you have injected and said, sister, I feel blank. And when this is coming to me, I don't feel connected with you. What could you have interjected there?
I could have said, sister, I feel, it would have to be a feeling.
Yeah, it's a feeling.
I mean, a word that would explain I'm feeling like I'm getting put down. I don't know if there's a...
Yeah.
That would kind of...
I'm feeling less than. Yeah. I'm feeling unheard.
Yeah.
I'm feeling unconnected. Yeah. Any of those. You can anything.
Yeah, I would say I was feeling less than.
Yeah, sister, whatever did you call her, right? Like, sister, I'm feeling less than in this moment right now.
Right.
And what I really need from you in this moment is, let's fill in the blank.
Is for you to like better communicate what you're trying to share with me by...
Yes, give an example.
giving like a better, like providing like a better tone of voice when you like sit down and make comments, or yeah.
Yes, you're on the right track. Okay, let's continue this. So here's something that humans most often do, right? We will definitely we will go deep. We will come for people. And we will say, you're not doing this, or this is what went wrong. Very infrequently will we say, this is what went really well. I'm a huge fan of the sandwich method, and this is a communication technique. So anytime things are not going the way we would prefer or we would like for connection to occur, it's important to do the sandwich method. For example, let's say I take my mom or something, right? And mom is just coming for me. I'm like, Mom, I feel unheard when you're screaming at me at the top of your lungs to come to the dinner table to come eat some turkey. Okay. What has worked for me in the past is when you come up the stairs and tell me, hey, we're all going to eat together. I love when you give me a heads up 30 minutes before, so I'm better prepared for this family situation to go down, right? And those are just small examples, but I'm giving her what does work. So she's just not lost in the deer in the headlights. So what has worked really well with Sis in the past? Let's follow the path of success. What has worked?
I think what's worked in the past is when we're not just like screaming at the top of each other's lungs, but maybe when we're able to like have a conversation while being more level-headed.
So we're cool, calm, collected. We're chill.
Yeah.
Okay. When have you felt most heard by her?
I suppose when like maybe I'm coming to her and I'm needing advice, and then she's giving me advice, and like it's there's a clear communication because like we both wanted it from one another. So yeah, I tell her what's going on in my life. She'll like give me advice, tell me like maybe what's going on in her life, and so we're both feeling very heard, and we're both feeling like raw and authentic and vulnerable, because I guess like at that point in time, like we both wanted that from each other. And when we're not heard is times when we don't necessarily want to hear, or we're not ready for a conversation where we want to be.
Yes, I completely agree. And here's the thing, Isabel. I like to use this example so frequently because it's reality and it's real, but we don't think about it in these scenarios for communication. If you're in your bedroom, right, and somebody just barges in, how would that feel?
I'd be kind of mad.
Like mad, like intrusive, like, oh, what if I was not ready for this, right? So normally what we're taught, or what we teach people of, etiquette is to do what before we go into someone's room? We knock, right? So we can actually use that here in communication techniques. One of the biggest things that has helped a lot of people that I see in therapy is telling them, hey, listen, before you have a really important conversation, whether you're given or getting from that conversation, is to mentally knock. What does that look like and sound like? Hey, Sally, listen, I really just need to, get your 2 cents on something. Is now a good time? And if so, I would be so grateful for 10 minutes of your time. Give them a time frame of what ish it's going to be, right? And then what you're needing. It's kind of like a text, like, hey girl, like, do you have 10 minutes? I really just need to check in. That way they know, okay, is this like an hour conversation about they? Like, no, this is just a quick check-in about this and this. It's like a mental knock.
That's really good.
Do you think that might in any kind of way impact your relationship with sister communication if you used it?
I definitely think so, for sure. I think if she had come to me like with that, it completely have changed like my reaction, or like how the conversation would have gone down. I think just like kind of asking, hey, is this okay? It's a good time. Like, I want to talk about this, X, Y, Z, or whatever.
And frequently it comes up with a lot of people. They're like, see, like, what if they say, that they're just not ready for that conversation? What if they say that? What do we do?
I mean, I guess respectfully could be like, okay, when would be a good time?
Yes, follow up. That's it. And just asking, okay, great, no worries, I understand. When is a good time for us to follow up, as this is important to me and I want to further connect with you? Right? I don't want to go in on you about leaving the dishes out. I want to connect with you, right?
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Quick question. So that's with sis, but like with mom, it's like almost a different dynamic. I don't know if you have a quick answer for that. Like, if mom wants me to do something, like I can't, it's kind of like a little bit different.
Absolutely. Then we respectfully use boundaries, and a lot of cultures and families don't have boundaries. So we just say, hey, listen, I hear you, I see you, and here's when I have a good amount of time to address this, because I really just want to be present and fully there for you in that moment. How does blank time sound? Is that all right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, like the wife that comes over and, you know, the partner is watching football. It's like, not right now, honey. Like, okay, pretty football's not a good time. You know that. Let's take out the trash later, right?
Yeah.
So choose your battles on that one, but also communicating, here is what works. Let's meet in the middle.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Isabel, so as always, I like to leave time at the end, right? I love to do this check-in, check-out, right? It's kind of like when a child gets picked up from school and it's like, what was the highlight of your day? What was the low part, right?
Definitely.
So I want to ask, what, if anything, was the light bulb moment or the takeaway from this session right now with you?
I would say for me, probably, I really, really love the last example that you gave of kind of like the check-in with like the knocking on the door, and like that really kind of resonated, because I was like, wow, that makes sense. Like, we don't like it, for example, when people just barge in, or just kind of that mental checkup or that check-in, seeing if someone is ready for a conversation, asking them if they're ready for it, kind of just completely will change the tone or the way I think other people will react. So I would really love that example, and I think that I'll next time go into that with any conversations with family members, so I'm not feeling like I'm barging in on someone or someone else is maybe barging in on me.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. Yes, you're going to have better relationships with sister.
Yeah.
And as always, you know, we're human. I'm euphonious. I'm not perfect. I always like to ask my clients what went well, but also what doesn't work for you in session. Is there anything that you feel could be altered or changed for us to improve our connection?
I think this was really, really good. I think this was our first session. I'm sure that there's a lot more, even with my family. So I guess like hearing, or like maybe even like finding ways to like dig a little bit deeper. I know that I gave like one example, but I'm sure that there's definitely other ones for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, thank you for sharing that, Isabel. And a lot of people also are sometimes a little bit timid to come into therapy because they're like, oh my gosh, I have so much. Where do I start? Right. But it's literally just the saying of like one step at a time.
Yeah.
You know, I always share from personal experience that I go to therapy too. Like I got a mama with drama. So it definitely works. I super appreciate your feedback, and then I'm really excited to just see you next week in session.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate
you're welcome. So now we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and we're going to go ahead and take some Q&A.